So I'm not sure about you, but lately in Genshin, there's been this trend where a lot more focus has been put on character constellations. Maybe it's due to Stygian Onslaught, or maybe it's because we can get some free constellations from this permanent event, but I've been thinking for a while now. There's definitely some constellations I regret getting. However, there's also a few I wish I've gotten. So I thought, what the heck, why not make a video about this? Now, I'll be honest, this is a super casual review and only my personal opinion. In fact, I'm not even gonna be relying on some Omega calculations, just simply sharing my thoughts over the years. And you might even be surprised, I own all the units, but I don't have that many constellations. Like, most of my limited 5 stars range between C0, C1, and C2. So yeah, let me share my very scuffed and unprofessional opinion of the constellations I got. But first, this video is sponsored by one of my favorite gacha games, Path to Nowhere. And guys, things are about to get crazy because the 3rd anniversary has finally arrived, featuring the Shattered Blade storyline, kicking things off with the long-foreshadowed war that everyone's been waiting for. All the factions are about to duke it out. And here's the best part, you can obtain tons of anniversary rewards, including 60 free pulls, which you could obtain 50 from events plus 10 from in-game mail, and get this, a free monthly pass. Yeah, you heard it right, Path to Nowhere developers have always been super generous, and this one takes the cake. Seriously, this is the best time to come back or begin playing. But let's talk about the new characters, starting with Augustus. I don't know how she's able to pull it off, but she looks amazing both in her military and the beautiful red dress. Not only that, she's a total powerhouse and easy to use, so she's an essential addition to any team. However, there's also Llama. This time you can pull for her brand new form, and man, she's such a flexible unit and works in so many different comps. But the goodness doesn't end yet. This anniversary update also introduces a bunch of new game systems and modes, including plenty of quality of life changes to ensure you have the best gaming experience. So yeah, what are you waiting for? Download Path to Nowhere by using my link in the description and join millions of players in this action-packed world. Thank you again, Path to Nowhere, for supporting my channel. Seriously guys, don't miss out on this anniversary. Okay, so as I said, take everything I say here with a massive grain of salt because I'm not relying on calculations here, just sharing my personal opinion and experience I've had with the characters and which constellations I regret pulling for. Seriously, this is not a guide-oriented video, but more of a confession video where I will share my thoughts. Okay, so with the million disclaimers out of the way, let's start with someone fresh. Flynn's. Man, I love his playstyle so much, and I remember I had a lot of fun making his C0 guide video because the dude has 2 different playstyles. You either go with mini bursts or include big bursts into the rotation for the triple burst playstyle. However, once I unlocked his first constellation, things have been never the same. And I am of course talking about the triple burst playstyle, or more specifically, the inclusion of his big burst. For me, it no longer exists. And I know that you can technically include it even at C1, but due to some buffs wearing off because of longer field time and higher energy requirements to include all 3 mini bursts and big bursts, I don't know man, I just simply started using his triple mini burst and call it a day. And it's not like this has to do with his damage performance. I've seen other Flynn's mains stating that it's still possible to include his big burst even at C1, but it leads to some quirky modifications needed to do the rotations, so overall, yeah, his C1 is really strong, but I've kind of lost motivation using his big burst in my rotations. Not a big deal, I mean, I could just ignore his C1 and still go for the C0 triple burst rotation, although since I also have Inefa, I just like to use his C1 playstyle with mini burst strictly. But if I didn't have her, then I'd feel better about getting his C1 since it gives him a big boost in performance. Anyway, next one that comes to mind would be Raiden. I have her at C3 and boy oh boy, due to all the power creep, HP inflation in enemies and so on, I just feel like I got pressured into pulling her C2 and then C3. I mean look, back in 2021, which already makes me feel like a decrepit man by just saying that, but it was all the rage at the time to get her C2, a huge breaking point in Genshin's revenue since Raiden was insanely popular, and everyone and their mother thought C2 and then C3 was like the coolest thing to improve her damage. But these days, I find this funny when I look back because she kind of became to me a Hyperbloom trigger, that's it. Although I guess in this latest Imaginary Theater cycle you can use Electro units, so it wasn't all that bad, but it's one of those moments where getting constellations to improve DPS of one unit made me feel regret. And the thing is, I love Raiden's design and her burst animation, but I think I should have kept her at C0 and just waited patiently, especially since after Inazuma, Sumeru showed up, and it didn't take long for people to figure out that Raiden was great at triggering Hyperblooms, which of course defeats the whole purpose of her kit, but to me, that's just how I feel it. Okay, I think this video is going to be way too long if I keep going off on a tangent, so let's speed things up. I have C2 Itto, and yeah, I really enjoyed his playstyle at the time, but getting 2 of his constellations was an overkill at the time. I should have stopped at C1, which was already decent to speed up his stacks building. Sadly, content for Geo hasn't been that super relevant over the years, and also later on Shiori and Navia showed up, so I hope my boy Spaghetti Arms Itto can redeem himself in the future. Speaking of which, and I know about some of the dreams that are happening these days, but I also have C2 Albedo. Now, my regular viewers know that I have a soft spot for this homunculus. He is my favorite character in Genshin's lore basically, but I don't know why I even got his constellations. I barely ever use him, although that might change in the future, but for now, all I can say is that I think I got seduced by his C2 back in 2020 because his burst could now scale with defense. Yeah, I was one of those guys. Anyway, next one on my list is Wanderer. He is at C2, and I'll be honest guys, I simply got him up to C2 because I thought I might enjoy him more, but it turns out it's really just a personal taste, and I unfortunately do not like using him in any content. He was great at the time to explore Sumeru deserts with flying ability, but I really should have just kept him at C0 because even if I like him as a character, I simply don't enjoy his gameplay, which is kind of sad to me. Like everything I wished for Wanderer, I got with Chaska, and she's to me personally a crazy fun unit to use and explore with. And again, remember, this is my own personal experience. I am sure there's tons of people who enjoy using him. Alright, who's next? Oh no, C1 Eula. Man, do I even need to say anything about it? Where's physical meta, Hoyo? Maybe with Varka? Nah, I don't know. But yeah, I just pulled C1 Eula with high hopes at the time, seeing her become even better in long term. But as it turns out, someone who worked on physical teams probably forgot to check their memo to keep the dream alive. Now, there's also C1 Ayaka, and this is probably one of the most infamous constellations in the game because of how simply bad it is. And the thing is, if I didn't have Skirk on my account, I'd probably get her C2 because you have to suffer the consequences of C1 to start enjoying C2. But for now, I am saving up my constellation from the event for someone else. And I'll talk about this a bit later, but yeah. Overall, C1 Ayaka, not a great idea for me to pull for. I kept her at C1 for many years now, and instead, I should have just saved my Primos. Although, she has one of the coolest bursts in the game in my opinion. Just need to make sure the enemies stay in place. But I think where I really regret pulling is C2 Cyno. Like, where do I even begin? I have no idea what kind of state of mind I was in when I decided to go and get more copies of this Lord of Puns. And honestly, it's not because his damage potential is lacking meta-wise. I just simply don't like the way you need to enable his burst in order to do damage. This especially sucks in multi-wave content, when you can't swap out and refresh buffs but gotta start a new rotation instead, well, usually. And worst of all, for me, he's just not that great in world exploration, since all of his damage is in the burst. Cool design, but to me, lacking in flexibility. Now, I just saw I have C1 Miko, and this constellation basically just helps her with energy, but the irony is, most of the teams I run her in, I just don't use her burst because it's usually a DPS loss. Although, I could be wrong and there's new calcs proving this otherwise, but yeah, this C1 to me was a huge mistake to get since I only use her skill in like 90% of the teams. I know there are many teams where her burst can be useful, but in my personal experience with the game, I just like to deploy her totems with the skill and move on to the next unit. But okay, I wanted to quickly check. Seems like her burst can be nice in lunar charge teams, so maybe I shouldn't feel too bad. But I know where I can feel bad. C1 Ayato. Oh man, why did I even do this? This guy fell off so hard in terms of damage and meta. His constellations besides C6 just aren't that great, and this is one of those cases where it's very easy to see how much of a regretful decision I made. Although, who knows, maybe he will be able to redeem himself in the future with new supports. Now, this one is a bit of a twist because it's not a constellation, and since we're looking at Kokomi, I think most of you know what I'm talking about. That's right, the stupid donut weapon. Jeez, why did I even pull it? It's not like I have every single limited 5-star weapon on my account. Even though I pull for at least one copy of each unit, I sometimes skip on their signatures because I already have something similar or maybe weaker, but I don't want to spend a couple of $100 just to see a bigger number. Well, usually. But yeah, big mistake. Do not get this weapon. And yeah, otherwise, my Kokomi is C0, like the good fish lady she is. Alright, next one is C1 Child. Big mistake getting this one, especially since I heard from other whale players that C6 basically invalidates his C1, which is really funny to me, and now I'm stuck with my sweet child of mine like this. However, guess who else I have at C1 with a totally useless upgrade? Venti. Actually, I don't have the footage, but I believe this constellation paid off massively in one of the Mondstadt seasonal events where you had to pop a bunch of balloons, and that was the moment I knew I made the right choice when Venti could fire 3 arrows instead of 1 to hit many balloons. I am of course joking here, but overall, yeah, I know again there are some dreams floating around, but for now, it is what it is, and I should have saved my Primo Gems after 5 years have passed. Alrighty, this is the end of my regrets. Hopefully you guys understand by now how casually I'm approaching this whole thing. There's like over 100 characters in the game, and with all the meta shifts, including how exploration is handled in the game with Nodicry and Natlan units, some of these upgrades did not age well, and some were simply a mistake to pull for if I didn't commit getting further constellations. But overall, it is what it is. Now, there's a few constellations that I do wish I got, and I might get them on the reruns, so let me go through them quickly. First, we have Llama, and honestly, despite the fact C1 does nothing for improving her or team's damage, I do like the idea of her becoming a healer for the team because I especially felt this need when playing her together with Nefer without any other healer, like this team comp of Nahida, Nefer, and Cyno. Also, I am a sucker for extending movement abilities, and while Llama's deer form isn't the greatest, it does become more efficient and longer. So I could use her to interact with Nodcry's region and specifically design NPCs and animals for this druid lady. And then C2 of course makes her buffing much better since I believe it basically doubles the buffing amount, and since I really like Dendro comps, this could be a nice upgrade. Plus, she also makes Lunar Bloom hit a lot harder, which will be relevant for Nefer, and if I decide to go for damage focused Llama in Ascendant teams. Then there's Neuvillette. Bro, this guy had like 3 banners and I'm still sitting at C0 with him, and yet he is still so good. I do have his signature, but his passive that requires different reactions is a lot weaker with a second Hydro unit, namely Farina. Plus, and I think this is one of the bigger reasons, but I believe the resistance to interruption he obtains from C1 is literally super armor, so he cannot get knocked around, which would be a huge quality of life boost for me. So yeah, maybe next banner I'm getting his C1 after more than 2 years. Now, Nilou is also another character I have my eye on, and since the Constellations event is active, I am definitely grabbing her C1, and then depending on when she reruns and if new developments in meta don't arise that negate her C2 usefulness, I'll probably pull on her banner. To be honest, C2 is like really amazing, so I don't see any reason not getting it once I'm at C1. Finally, there's Yelan, and I've been using her in so many teams ever since she was released. This female Xingqiu is such a powerhouse of a unit, and I'm quite surprised I kept her at C0. But I think this also shows how great of a unit can be even at C0 without needing copies. Still, that C1 is quite tempting for me, and I'm probably going to get it on her rerun because sometimes I need to make adjustments to her artifacts or weapon to make sure she gets her burst up, and getting that second skill tap from C1 also will make it much better for any other Hydro teammates on the team and lower their energy requirements. I am of course talking about the real Xingqiu here if I run double Hydro teams. But yeah, these would be all of the constellations I regret getting and wish I've gotten. Hopefully you found this video interesting. I skipped over some 5 stars, but a lot of them are still at C0, and as I said, I usually try to just get the character and maybe their signature so I can make videos, but overall, I feel like I could have done better with my need to burn Primo Gems. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you soon.